why are you so passionate about being involved in organizations that are helping others?
I don't know.
Okay.
So, I think it's just always made sense to me. And I think like there's a lot of ways that I'm not privileged, but there's obviously like tons of ways, especially systemically, that I am privileged. And you do have to be careful with nonprofits. Like there is a lot of white saviorism, and you always want to be aware of that and be very careful of that. And you know, not even steering clear of it, but just sometimes helping people see it, or just asking the right questions, or asking if you receive an email from your favorite nonprofit that just says this person is leaving and we're so happy for their next move, and this person will be absorbing their role. Like, okay, are they getting, just checking in as politely as possible, like, great, are they, and like I just hope that they're being compensated extra for the extra work that they're taking. So the nonprofit industrial complex is not perfect, but I think just the idea of helping people and being able to make choices with like my expendable income, not that I don't like to go on, like I go on vacation and I do when I buy myself stupid stuff, but also like prioritizing what nonprofits I think are actually where like it's most direct, like the money is actually getting to the cause.
I want to welcome you to another episode of Media from the Heart. My name is Ruth Hill, and today I have an extra special episode for you. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to chat with the amazing, unbelievably talented, most kind-hearted woman. Her name is Caileigh Scott. Now, you may not know her because she lives in New York. She's done some Broadway stuff and has done some comedy stuff, but you may not be familiar with her work. She has done some TV and film, and we'll talk about that. But she has a heart for philanthropy like no one else that I've ever seen. And we talk about that. We talk about her background. This woman is always thinking of everybody else. And so for those who were in my virtual audience, we had a real treat in getting the chance to meet her. I want you all to have that opportunity. And today's episode, please stick around. You're not going to get this kind of episode anywhere else, I promise you. And I do encourage you to stay around to the end because I have just been alerted to something that is going on right now in relation to Caileigh. Something that I think you as my viewers and listeners would love to be a part of. Until then, go ahead and sit back, relax, and enjoy the Belle of Broadway herself, Miss Caileigh Scott. Well, it is my joy and honor to be back with all of you for another episode of Media from the Heart. My name is Ruth Hill, and I am your host. And I have a very special guest. Her name is Caileigh Scott. And Caileigh, I'm so glad to have you here. And we also have a virtual audience, so I'm sure we'll be hearing from. But I want to introduce you to Caileigh Scott. You may not be aware of her because she's in the New York area, and she's been doing theater stuff. She has done some other stuff, but let me read you this brief introduction about Caileigh. Caileigh Scott is an actor, writer, comedian, and philanthropist from New York City. The only child of a modern dancer and folk musician, she has been surrounded by the arts, activism, and philanthropy her entire life. A dancer before she could walk, Caileigh initially envisioned a career with the New York City Ballet, but at the age of 12 was cast in her first professional stage production, and the acting bug bit. Standing 5 foot 10 inches tall by the age of 14, Caileigh also began modeling, walking in New York Fashion Week, Los Angeles Fashion Week, and Rock the Fashion for VH1's Save the Music, as well as appearing in numerous print campaigns. After graduating high school in the top 5% of her class, she attended AMDA, a competitive performing arts college, where she majored in theater and minored in comedy theory. She has appeared on stage in New York, Los Angeles, regionally, and internationally, on television and in film. In 2017, Caileigh and her close friend from childhood theater camp, Jacklyn Collier, formed the comedy duo GirlCrush Comedy and the youth acting coaching company Theater Kids Coaching. In her free time, Caileigh is an equestrian, archer, and tea connoisseur. All right. Well,
Indeed.
well, very impressive, Caileigh, and it is such a joy to have you here. And I'm so glad Jax was instrumental in getting us set up, and
Yes.
and so Jax is just amazing, and how cool that you all have known each other for all this time. So you guys have known each other since you were kids.
Since we were kids, yeah. I guess, let me do some quick math, which will out our age a little bit, but I believe we met in 1999, so 23 years. Oh, almost summer of 1999, so goodness. Almost 23 years.
How cool is that? And I hadn't even realized till I was reading through this that you both had a comedy duo. I guess I knew something about the theater stuff. I did know something about that, but I didn't know that you had done that with her. The theater, for youth theater. But you have a comedy duo. What's the story with the comedy duo?
We do. In 2017, I mean, we had worked together a little more unofficially. We've been teaching kids for a long time. Before we had before we had Theater Kids Coaching, we worked for other companies and ran children's classes for them. And we just decided we wanted to do something that was actually our own. And so I sort of sat down one day and wrote a quick couple of pages, and I sent it to her. And then we, worked together on finishing it, and we hired a director. And so our skits are mostly online and mostly digital. So we filmed it. We released it. We ended up being able to collaborate through someone who found us online, and she's based in LA. Her name is Jamie Janik. She's so funny. And so she ended up writing something, and we all worked together. So it's just led to meeting very cool people. And while working with someone that, when you've known forever, it just makes it so much more fun.
All right. Well, I'm glad that I now know about it, because I'm definitely going to look it up. I didn't know it was available online. So how cool is that?
Oh, yes.
That's awesome.
I'll send it to you.
That's awesome. Well, and we'll make sure that we let everybody who gets to listen and or watch this, that they will know where to look for it as well, because I can only imagine Jax is someone that
so naturally funny, a very gifted sort of natural comedian, and a natural storyteller.
Yes, she is. And so I will look forward to seeing that for sure. So Caileigh, you're from New York City, so of course, in some ways it could make sense that you would be interested in acting, or actually you said that you were going to be in ballet. Those were your earliest aspirations. So why did you decide that you wanted to do something in the arts? What was your inspiration?
I think it's funny. When I was really small, I actually didn't see myself in the arts at all, because I think when you're a kid and your parents do something, you kind of want it. Well, I think it depends. It's one of two things. You either are like 100% I want to go down that same path, or you're like, I want to do the opposite. So it's like, maybe I'll be a nurse, maybe I'll be a marine biologist. But all the while, this was when I was 7 or 8, all the while dancing and playing musical instruments and doing all the things that you sort of try on as a child, if you're lucky enough to have parents who can afford. There's always like an access issue there, but I was lucky enough to be able to like try a bunch of different things on and see what was right for me. So by the time I was 8 or 9, I got really into dance, and then in all different kinds of dance, ballet being the thing I studied first, and obviously what I consider to be the foundation for everything else. It doesn't have to be, but and I did tap, and I did jazz and modern ballet. So I really, and an opportunity to do a summer program at the Joffrey, which is sort of a bigger ballet theater. And so that was, and my mother is obviously a dancer. And so it just ended up being very natural to want to dance and to dance. And my grandmother loved the arts when she was alive and always, loved going to the Nutcracker every Christmas and stuff like that. But yeah, when I was 12, there was an open call for act for children. It was a children's theater production, like for children using children actors. But they asked for dancers. Like it was a pretty open call. So I went to the dance call, bombed it. Like the least coordinated day of my entire life. Like basically tripping over my own two feet. And I was like, well, no, like this is going nowhere, but that's fine. And then the director said, did you want to read some sides and audition for another like a speaking role? And so that's sort of where the road turned.
I see. Okay. Well, I took ballet once upon a time and I couldn't stand it.
It's very painful. Like you just hold muscle groups for like extended periods of time.
I had a really great, when I first took ballet, I had a great dance instructor. She was really nice. I was like, 5 years old or something like that, 4 or 5, I can't remember exactly. And so I remember that I really liked my first teacher, and then she left. I think she actually got pregnant, if I remember right. I think she was left to have a baby. And so then this guy came on, and I did not like him. He was just too, I don't know. I remember him just being very bombastic and just not who I needed at that point. And so I was really glad to leave that. And then the next year, my mom's like, okay, do you want to keep taking ballet or do you want to take piano? And I'm like, piano. I'll take piano. It's like anything. I don't want to take ballet. And so I grew up very uncoordinated. I actually took a dance class because the way I got to go to New York the first time was because I was a part of a show choir, and I took dance lessons so that I could be a part of that. And that's how I got to see my first Broadway musical. That was back in 1992.
Okay.
And I was able to see Phantom of the Opera, and we were involved in competition, and we won the competition. So that was really cool. So those are like that. So I always wanted to be on Broadway. Not always, but from that point on, I should say, I always wanted to be on Broadway. And then I realized, no, I don't quite want that. So then I went on to be a teacher. But and now I've got you.
Very noble profession.
You're a person that I get to interview with that. So your story just kind of made me think of my story, and that's so great that the acting bug bit you, but you have the dance stuff. You've taken tap too. I took tap as an adult. That was an experience.
I think it's so fun. Yes. I think with anything, it sounds like I think a lot of times dance teachers don't have perspective. And if it's a very serious program where every child in it is actually like, I am super focused and I want to be a dancer, that's one thing. And they're still kids. And I think there has to be room for that. But I think a lot of times, even in adult classes I've taken at Ailey, some of the teachers are amazing and they get like, it's just adults trying to stay limber and like maybe learn something new or just like have fun. Like the whole point of a hobby is to have fun. And I think sometimes they treat every single student like you're trying to be a professional dancer, and that's not always the case. It doesn't have to be the case. Like some things you can just do for fun and you try hard and maybe you're good at it, maybe you're not. And I think sometimes people just lose that perspective when they're teaching and they get like really drilled into trying to help people be the best.
I'm glad you said all that, because that's good perspective. I would agree with you on that. And but I want to also address this thing. So when you graduated from high school, now before you graduated from high school, you were actually modeling. Is that what I understand?
Yes. Yeah. So being 5'10" as an adult is, especially in New York, there's a lot of tall people here. It doesn't feel like exceptionally tall. But yes, in middle school and early high school, it feels very tall. And with that comes, a lot of people being like, do you play basketball or do you model? And for a long time I was like, neither. Like I don't do either of those things. But I did end up, and I sort of resisted it because at the time in the late 90s there was this whole like silly stigma around models who were trying to be actresses, but there wasn't really the same stigma around like male athletes who were trying to be in movies. So I was like, no one will take me seriously as an actor if I model. But then I just decided like, well, the opportunity is here and why not explore it a little bit and see where it leads. And fashion is very fun, and it's like a very fun form of creative expression. Like to this day, I think it's such a fun way to, like you can step out the door and sort of a character, like depending on what outfit you put on, you can just be someone totally different. And I think that's super fun about fashion. So yes, but I started modeling when I was 14. I was already 5'10". And then I continued on and off. And I'll still do it sort of for people I know, but I continued on and off until I was like 30, 31. And then I was like, I gotta get out.
Well, yeah, 5'10". I'm trying to think of, I don't know a lot of women that were that tall. So that's
Yeah.
really, and not that it's a bad thing. I mean, that's
Yeah.
I'm sure there are drawbacks to being short. There are drawbacks to being tall. I know.
And I was just talking to a friend who's I think 5'3" about this, and we were like, if you are sort of on one end of the spectrum, people talk to you a lot about it, and it's like the one thing that you're A, probably insecure about, and B, can't change. Like if someone's like someone said to my friend like, oh, you're so short, she had to do public speaking, and she was like, I mean, I can wear heels, like I don't know how, I can't fix it any other way, like it is what it is. And someone said to me something about like being a little too tall for something, and I was like, I can't make myself shorter.
True, exactly. I mean, because hey, Brooke Shields is tall. She's sometimes taller than her co-stars.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
and
they stand on an apple box and it's fine.
That's right. So big deal. No, that's not something you can change. So
it's almost the one thing you can't. Like anything else, if you really want to, if you're super insecure or people comment enough and it just gets to you, you can change. Like your nose, you can change, your hair color, you can change. Like there's so much you can change if you have the money to do it. But yeah, you really can't change your height.
Yeah, exactly.
It is what it is.
So you graduated the top 5% of your class. Now that, I think that is truly impressive. I graduated from with honors too. So I mean, I was like towards the top of my class. So I know I know how that. So when I read that, I was like, oh my goodness. So she's, not only are you artistically talented, but you also are a gifted student, it would seem.
Yeah, I mean, it's work, especially toward the end of high school. It's kind of easy.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, and then all of a sudden you're like, ooh, trigonometry, yikes, because you start to be like, oh, I'm much better at like literature and history than maybe the STEM fields, especially, now there's so much work going into helping make sure that young women and young girls of color are like being exposed to STEM and have access to it. But in the 90s, that was not the case. So yeah, it's definitely work toward the end, or at least it was for me, to kind of keep the GPA where I wanted it to be, because of just, the both sides, the things that came very easily and almost took no work, and then the things that I was like, ooh, good thing I'm not trying to go into this.
I hear you on that. Yeah,
not good at it.
I understand. I struggled. I still kept A's and stuff, mostly in math, but I struggled through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hear you on that.
Same. It was effort. Like it wasn't what it once was. Like there was just a turning point where all of a sudden, like I actually had to study.
Yeah, I hear you completely. So
That's a bummer.
when you were going off to college, then did
Mhm.
you know that you wanted to definitely pursue I mean, it would seem like you were wanting to pursue a career in the arts. Is that correct?
Yeah. I actually I debated going to a college that just had really strong arts majors, but also did other things, more of a liberal arts university. But I ended up going to a college that there's only performing arts degrees. So dance degrees, musical theater, acting, stuff like that. So that's where I ended up going. So sort of like, are you limiting yourself in some ways? Sure, because on paper you may not have like a well-rounded degree. But I sort of felt like I think a lot of college, or it's good for a lot of people when they go to college, if they're able to go to college, is especially if they're not quite sure, is like all the access to all the different kinds of classes, because then you can figure out what it is that you like. Um, and we're also like asking 18-year-olds to know what they want to do with the rest of their lives, which is completely ludicrous.
Yeah,
Like
I agree.
we all constantly reinvent ourselves. But I was like, I know what I want to do. And it's not like they didn't have integrative studies. It was just all very focused around theater. So when we would study history, it would be elements of world history and then how it influenced playwrights like Ibsen, Strindberg, Chekhov. And so that's sort of the lens that we learned other subjects through, but we did have them.
Okay, I understand. And well, it's great that you were able to get into a college like
Yeah.
that, and to be because I know not everybody goes the same path, not everybody has the same opportunities for for various
Yeah.
things, and so that's exciting that you were able to do it. Sounds like it was a great experience. And
Yeah.
so from there, um, is that then how you got involved in doing professional theater? Is that how that happened?
Yeah. After I graduated, I went for 2 years, took a little time off, and then completed the degree in LA. They have a Los Angeles campus. So which is super helpful. That one obviously focuses more on film. I ended up doing summer stock, which for those who aren't familiar is basically a regional theater that uses actors primarily from New York, but sometimes Chicago, but more of like what they would call a major market, and like imports them to the town. And you spend your summer there doing usually multiple plays, sort of in rep. Um, and this one actually did no musicals, and so that was really interesting, and that's really rare. So I did a couple seasons of summer stock in Kentucky and theater in New York, and then ended up moving to LA, where I still did theater. Actually, it's like a little harder to find out there, but
True. Yeah.
it's still there.
Well, that's actually that's so no musicals for summer stock. That does seem unusual because I know about summer stock, and I'm always thinking they're always doing musicals. At least they some at least.
Yeah. So some are all musicals. Most, I think, are one will be a musical and then the next one won't be, or it's the really big ones that get the A-list actors. So maybe they are just doing like Streetcar Named Desire, but it's with like Tony winners or Golden Globe winners or something like that. But the rest usually do have, and then they have like a company for the straight plays and then like a company for the musicals.
Right.
But yeah, this one is 5. It's called the Pioneer Playhouse in Kentucky, a little south of Lexington. And so it's a lot of, there's some Sherlock Holmes, but mostly it's farces, comedies, right? Like if you're going to theater in the summer, for the most part, I think you just want to laugh and have a good time. So nothing too serious.
Yeah.
But it was super fun.
That's cool. So what have been some of the are there some roles that stick out to you professionally that are really special memories to you?
Yeah, there's a few. I've played Masha in Three Sisters, which is a classical play by Chekhov,
Okay.
twice,
Hmm.
and completely unrelated, just two different theaters cast me as Masha. And that was so interesting because it was also several years had passed, but it was just one of those roles that just fits. Like she's kind of sassy, or I don't know, the way I interpreted her was
Yeah.
like she's kind of sassy. She like hates her husband, which is not my experience, but she like hates her husband, and it's very funny. The whole She's like the middle sister. The whole thing is very funny, and even though a lot of like I have no siblings, so it's not like I identified with her in any way other than personality. But that was so special to just like click pretty easily with a role,
Mhm.
because sometimes you don't. Another piece that really stands out is it's a nonlinear play, and I'm blanking. It's Pirandello, and it's called Six Characters in Search of an Author,
Hmm.
and that is very challenging because it's like a lot to explain, and I don't want to bore anyone, or like it'll end up being an hour later. But basically, there's like most of the action of the play takes place with characters in an author's head, um, and you kind of weave in and out of it, and that was really challenging to play. Like you just are going in and out of reality and fantasy and jumping through time, so it's not like it's this day and then by the end of the play it's 3 days later. It's all over the place, so it's challenging to bring the audience. Well, it's like challenging to know what's happening sometimes as an actor, but like also challenging to bring the audience with you in that and make sure everyone's on the same page. Sort of like when you do Shakespeare, you really need to know what you're saying, because if you are just like if you're just like letting the words come out and you don't actually know what the meaning is, the audience isn't gonna know. Like, how do you follow something if the person saying it has no clue what it means? So those are a couple roles. And then comedy, I mean, the first time I've played her twice. uh, when I was about 19, I auditioned for Twelfth Night, and I really wanted Viola, who's like um, the lead. There's sort of, there's four main characters, but I would say Viola is the lead, and then Olivia is like a bit more of the comic relief. She's a little more supporting. I really wanted Viola. Helen Hunt played Viola at Lincoln Center in 1998, and I saw her.
Yeah.
And this was like only a few years later, so I really wanted it. And I got Olivia, and you can't be too disappointed because you got something, and like still a really good part. So you can't like let anything really take over. But I was like, oh, like I wonder why, I wonder why I didn't get
Mm.
Viola. Usually people think I read older than I am.
Mhm.
And then as Olivia, the first time I heard a laugh, like just in the rehearsal, I was like, I might like doing comedy because 12th Night is a comedy.
Right.
And it was so addictive. And I was like, oh, I could never be a stand up, but I get it. Like in that moment, I was like, oh, I see why the laughter is very addictive to
Right.
people.
Wow. So I know that you've done musicals, and I think that you've also done some film and or TV work as well. Um,
Hmm.
so with musicals, are there musicals, are there roles that you have done, or maybe even roles that you hope to do? I don't know exactly where you are
You
on that.
know, I at this point, maybe it would have to be like a pretty big theater. Like, you can play a lot younger in theater because there's so much room. Um, but I've always wanted to play Millie in Thoroughly Modern Millie. I saw Sutton Foster do it when I was a teenager, and I was like, you can't really tell here, but like, I'm tall and pretty, like straight up and down. Like I was like, I have a flapper body type. That's all I want to do. I don't know that I have the pipes. That is like a pretty intense, like belty vocal role. But I've always thought it just looked like so much fun. And I was like, I have the like they do in musical theater more than anything else, like they do typecasting. And I was like, well, I wouldn't be what they would call typed out, which means before you show them any of your talent, they're just like, you, no, thank you. Like, thank you, but no, thank you. You can go.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that wouldn't happen. Like, I would get through that round.
Right.
For sure. Just based on like having a flapper body type. But I don't know that I have. I certainly don't sing like Sutton Foster. So you do.
Yeah, well, that's true. I know. Yeah, yeah, she's pretty incredible. Um,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
well,
Her and
that's
Audra McDonald are like
yeah.
such
Oh,
icons.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, well, yeah, it's been a long time since I've only ever seen the movie version of Thoroughly Modern Millie, but it's been a long time. But I remember it's quite a fun musical from what I remember. It's been a long time. I need to look it back up and watch
It
it again because
it's so fun. If you listen to, you can look up on YouTube the Broadway shows, like original
yeah,
cast recording.
right.
Yeah, it's just really fun. There's like a number with a typewriter, and they use tap shoes as the typing
Right.
keys. It was really smart choreography, and it came. I forget when it actually premiered on, but anyhow, it was out right around the time of 9/11. So I think everybody just flocked there because it was so happy, and so joyful. And, you didn't really want to go see something serious. It was like the producers and Thoroughly Modern Millie were sort of the two big ones
Yeah.
that autumn.
Right.
So yes, it's just like a happy, fun
Yeah.
show. You just genuinely root for the protagonists. It's great. Even the music is just fun to listen to.
It is. It is. Well, and then I know that in your bio it says that you've done some TV and film work.
Mm-hmm.
So can you fill us in a little bit on what that work has been consists of?
Yeah, I've done. I got to do SNL, which was very fun, and I had such a great experience. This was 2017, I think. Maybe also in 2018, because once you do it, like they kind of bring you back. So that was very fun. And my favorite part about that was like an ex-boyfriend texted me about it, and that always feels really good when, to be quite honest, when like someone who's not in your life anymore is like, wow, cool, like saw you on SNL, and you're like, yes, you did. But that was just such a fun experience. It's a long day. Like it's the pre-tape. So when you see like the commercials and the parodies and stuff that they do, I've never done a live show. I would love to, but I've done a couple of the pre-tapes. So those are taped the Friday before, and they tend to be long days because they have sort of the time to actually do multiple takes and get those really solid. And yeah, I've done a couple pilots, which are TV, like the first episode of a TV show, and just different spots on, different series, mostly in LA,
Mm-hmm.
and different films of various lengths. I got to work with Shia LaBeouf,
Oh,
and Jim Gaffigan, which was very fun. And it was like very secretive, to the point that a boyfriend at the time was driving me to set. This was in LA, and I really had very few details about the project. It was like a 6 a.m. call in the Valley. And he was like, are we sure this is legit? And I was like, I think so. Like, I got it through, it's my agent, but you never know. Like, they can sort of be bamboozled too. And
mm-hmm.
he's like, okay, call me if anything's weird. Like, maybe I'll stick around. And it was just this was a 2012 maybe. So I think they were just trying to keep it under wraps so nobody, said anything. But yeah, I got there, and it was like a short film being directed by Shia LaBeouf, and I was like, oh, okay, the secrecy all makes sense now. But that was super fun. Just a fun sort of unexpected couple days that ended up happening, that started like, very typical of the entertainment industry, where you're like, is this a trick, or is this like a very legit job? Like so many times you truly, like, it could be either or.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Wow. Well, and I know as a stage actor, or even just a regional actor, because I mean, yeah, New York, I know there's things that film, they're not saying that there's not, but when we think of filming, we're thinking of, okay, everybody's out in LA, and then lots of times you hear about they just, but I know regional acting there's a lot more opportunities than there ever were before, and of course I think the pandemic has opened up a lot more opportunities. But
yeah,
I have heard from a lot of my friends who love theater. They love doing theater, but they say they just struggle to make a living as a theater actor. And so, what has been your experience with being, whether it's with being stage actor, New York actor, what has been your experience in just being an actor and not being one of the, I mean, I don't know, would they, I don't
like
A-list,
like
not A-list, right?
Yeah, theater is definitely more challenging to make a living at consistently. The folks that I know who do it, even then, even if you're on Broadway and you're not a Sutton Foster or an Audra McDonald, you're definitely getting paid more than a lot of theater actors, for sure, especially if you're in a long running show. But a lot of folks I know who are, making a living, or who are making a living on Broadway when the pandemic, like exclusively on Broadway, when the pandemic hit, I mean, it was a living, but it's not like there was a huge safety net. And so that impacted, people having to leave the city and stuff like that. So I think for me, and I think for a lot of people, you have to toggle back and forth because there is just more money in film and television. But theater is a lot of times the things people love, and even, very reputable, even like off-Broadway theater companies that get big name actors. Those people aren't doing it for the money, because it's not a lot. It is very, very low. Even like a famous person is not making a lot of money doing that. They're just doing it because they wanted to.
Exactly.
So yeah, you do. I think if you're not a famous person, you really have to just go back and forth if that's what your skill set allows for. It's like, look at Madam Secretary, which filmed in New York City, and so many of that cast are theater actors, are Broadway actors.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. So the show obviously was a lot of money, or much more money than Broadway, but they were still in town. So when they were on hiatus, they could, do theater if they wanted to.
Right. Well, I certainly applaud you for continuing to go after your dreams, and because I know that the pandemic, especially, there was a lot of people, of course, that just seemed to kind of come out of nowhere. None of us could have really planned necessarily. We didn't know that 2020 all of a sudden, it starts out okay, and then it's like, oh, what happened here, and everything's and I certainly applaud you for continuing to pursue your dreams, stick to your dreams, find ways to make it work. And I think that shows a great deal of determination on your part, and I think that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Kudos to you, definitely.
Thank you.
Listening, and I was gonna say probably Paula Cooley was the first one, because she's really good. So Paula, go for it.
Hello, I got my book.
I love it.
So I love Broadway. And people come from Europe, and I live in New York, and they said, can you take me to the Empire State Building? Can you take me see a Broadway show? I says, yes, but I live in Buffalo, and it's an 8-hour train ride.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not close.
It's not close. They think it's like next door. I can look out my window and see the Statue of Liberty, but it isn't happening. And I just recently, I got to go in October with my daughter-in-law, and we went to see Waitress, the musical. It was just wonderful. And I've gotten to see a lot of different ones several times, but if I were to go now, today, what would be the one show that you would want to see?
I would say, and I'm pretty sure it's still on. So apologies if I'm just leading you down like a dead end street. The Tina Turner musical. Adrienne Warren is incredible. She won a Tony. Even if she's no longer in it, she just won the Tony in September because they were later. If she's no longer in it, whoever's in it is amazing. I would say go to that. If Adrienne is still in it, 100%, absolutely, she's phenomenal. I would say that. If you've seen it, let me know. But I think, especially if you love the movie, Moulin Rouge is super fun. It's a little more Vegas-y, I would say, than Broadway, but it's like a spectacle as it should be, because that was the point of the Moulin Rouge. So those are two that I would say. And then Hadestown. Hadestown is amazing. My friend Kimberly was in the original Broadway cast. She's now on tour with the show. So if a tour comes near you, go see it. Say hi to Kimberly. And if you're in New York City, go see the Broadway production if you're able to.
All right. And then the other question I had, Ruthie asked you about the schooling, so I got that written down. You said you were involved in equestrian. How and when? I want to know about the equestrian and your tea.
Okay. Well, first, horses. So I love horses. I grew up riding. I took a bit of a break in my 20s, as you do, as you sort of go to college and get busy. And I started riding again about 7 years ago when I moved back to the city, because there are places to ride in the city, which not in Manhattan really, but in the other boroughs and in Jersey and in Long Island. So I ride English, but I love a Western trail ride, hunter jumper style. I keep threatening to take a polo lesson. I know someone who's, an incredible polo player, has been playing polo her whole life. So I love that. And I do archery. So I've been learning mounted archery, which is like archery on horseback, like Wonder Woman style, sort of. But I just love horses. Every time I live near Central Park, so anytime I run into the carriage horses, I always end up stopping and saying hello. And last night, actually, this incredible New York City magical moment where I stopped and I said, I've had a long day. Do you mind if I just say hello? Because I don't want them to think that I'm going to buy a ride. And he said, oh, sure, go for it. And I had mentioned I was walking to dinner. And he's like, well, if you're walking to dinner, it sounds close. It's been slow. We're about to leave anyway. I'll just give you a ride. So I rolled up to dinner in a horse-drawn carriage, and my friends were like, that's right. This just seems right. So yeah, no, I will take any opportunity to hang out with a horse. And I volunteer with 2 therapeutic riding programs, where children with developmental and physical disabilities learn how to ride and just take care of horses. And then the tea, I have recently, this is probably not like a tea purists, they would probably roll their eyes, but I recently got really obsessed with London fog lattes, which is an Earl Grey tea latte. I get mine with oat milk and then a little bit of lavender and a little bit of vanilla. And it's so cozy and so good. And then at night, I obviously have to switch to a lemon ginger version of that, but I still make it with the steamed milk and a little bit of vanilla. So but there's very cool, places to do high tea in the city, which is always fun. There's a tiny little spot in Brooklyn that has 4 comfortable tables that is only open 3 days a week, but that's very fun to do too, because they have, a long list of teas I've never heard of, and it's always fun to try.
I love high tea. It just is
so fun.
And you got to have tea in a china cup.
Yes. Yes.
Not a mug.
No, the proper with the
crazy.
Saucer.
Yeah.
High tea is fun. Have you done high tea at the Plaza? Have you ever done that?
No, I haven't. I would love to.
Treat yourself. Next time you're here, treat yourself to high tea at the Plaza. It's
okay. I would love
quintessential.
That's a dream. That's one of those dreams. So
yeah,
I will try that. So
yes, you should.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna remember that, since I'm gonna be in New York. Of course, I don't know if my daughter would be up for tea. She doesn't drink tea or coffee.
They bring out the whole stack of the food and all the macaroons and all the treats. So there's that element to it.
Okay. Well, I might talk with her about it and just say, are you interested? Because it sounds like so much fun.
I don't know if she ever read the Eloise books, but it's sort of like themed around that a little bit. Otherwise, there's really good desserts, like mini desserts.
Okay. If there's good dessert, I might be able to get her interested then. We'll see. You never know. She'll have her first year of college done, so you never know where exactly she'll be. But no, that's great.
Right.
And this is what I love. So Paula, thank you for that question. I love the fact that we bring people on with questions, because then it's like we find out things that we wouldn't have normally talked about. So that's great. So I wanted to make sure that we talked about the whole philanthropy thing, because of course that's a big part of who you are. It's what you grew up with. Philanthropy has been a huge part of your life. And I know you've touched on it a little bit here and there with the horses and with other things mentioned here and there. But if you could just tell us some of the organizations that you're really passionate about working with, that'd be great.
Yeah. It's so hard to dial it down because there's so many. I'm really passionate about women's rights and leadership. So organizations like the Ms. Foundation and Vital Voices, especially because they really focus on, and especially Ms. Foundation, but they really focus on grants to smaller organizations that are actually like in communities. So it's the folks in that community, because whoever is experiencing the problem is the best person to solve it. And so they are really focused on grant making to those organizations that are on the ground doing the work, that just need a little bit of help, but don't need anybody who looks like us coming in and telling them what to do. They already know what to do. They just need help funding it. So I really love that. Obviously, anything animals. Sheldrick Wildlife Trust for elephants is a great one to help save African elephants whose population is really dwindling because of the ivory trade. And to the point that actually elephants are now evolving without big tusks, which is so sad. There's not a lot, they're trying to track how many are actually left that have big tusks, which hopefully just means like they will be able to thrive longer, because evolutionarily they are it's just very clear that the ones who have them aren't surviving, and so the ones who don't are the ones who are surviving. So it's very sad. But Sheldrick Wildlife Trust works to, and there's a few others, but they really work to raise orphaned elephants and sort of reintroduce them to a local herd. So the goal is not elephants living in captivity, but elephants flourishing locally. So many horse organizations, but the two that I volunteer with in the city for therapeutic riding are Flying Manes and Gallop NYC. Most areas have a therapeutic riding program, and anybody who wants to volunteer can. For the most part, you usually don't need horse experience. They'll teach you. So if anyone, or if it sounds like a good program for someone to be a rider in, usually if you just look up therapeutic riding in your town, you'll find something. There's another one that actually ties into Broadway, so I'll mention it. It's called Covenant House, and it's a place for young people, usually adolescents into I think 21, who are experiencing homelessness. And it's a place for them to go, but it's a lot more than a shelter. There's a ton of supportive services, mental health services, just physical health services, making sure that they get an education. If they are a teen parent, whoops, I just got so excited I tossed my laptop. If they're a teen parent, making sure there's a special, at least in New York, I think it works a little differently other places, but there's sort of a separate building where young people who are parents live, and they live with their children, and they're, the point is that they're raising their children. And it's so wonderful. And even some of the young people who go away to college, when they, when it's a holiday and everyone's going home, they can go back to Covenant House. Some people end up being able to reestablish a relationship with their families if that's, the reason that they ended up there. But not everyone can. And so they always have like a home to go to at Covenant House. And every year the film, television, and Broadway communities in New York do a sleep out. So you're not pretending to be homeless, but like in solidarity, you're sleeping out in their parking lot. And there's programming first where you meet with the young people and you hear from folks who work at Covenant House, and then you go and you sleep the night outside. And so some, the cast of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel does it. A lot of Broadway people do it. And 2 years ago, 2019 was the last time we were able to do it in person, because 2020 obviously was virtual. And then this past summer we were supposed to do it, but then we had a hurricane. So we did it virtual again, which is like actually really upsetting because I just need to be around people. So what, at the end of the night, we sort of sing up to them, like 10 p.m. is their lights out. So we sing up to them, Lean on Me. And this one year I was like, man, whoever's behind me has an amazing voice. And I was like, I mean, of course, like they're all Broadway people. So I'm sure like everyone's a singer here. I was like, wow, that voice is so good. And I didn't turn around. I didn't really think. I was sort of focused on just, experiencing my own moment. Mm-hmm. And then the next day, a couple of my friends like screenshot a video and sent it to me. And they were like, is this the back of your head on Audra McDonald's Instagram? And I was like, that's why the voice sounded so good.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
it's the voice of someone who has won 6 Tony Awards.
Well, yeah. Oh my goodness. That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
And
they do sleep outs all over. Okay. So not just in New York, there's multiple locations of Covenant House. And not just entertainment, that's just one. There's, corporate, there's young professional, there's, you can make your own.
Wow. Well, I love the fact that you just detailed so many organizations. And I can tell that it's something that is so much a part of who you are. I know your parents instilled it in you. I realized that from reading your bio, but it goes beyond that. It's a significant part of who you are. And so why are you so passionate about being involved in organizations that are helping others?
I don't know.
Okay.
So, I think it's just always made sense to me. And I think like there's a lot of ways that I'm not privileged, but there's obviously like tons of ways, especially systemically, that I am privileged. And you do have to be careful with nonprofits. Like there is a lot of white saviorism, and you always want to be aware of that and be very careful of that. And not even steering clear of it, but just sometimes helping people see it, or just asking the right questions, or asking if you receive an email from your favorite nonprofit that just says this person is leaving and we're so happy for their next move, and this person will be absorbing their role. Like, okay, are they just checking in as politely as possible? Like, great, are they? And like, I just hope that they're being compensated extra for the extra work that they're taking. So the nonprofit industrial complex is not perfect, but I think just the idea of helping people and being able to make choices with like my expendable income. Not that I don't like to go on, like I go on vacation and I do when I buy myself stupid stuff, but also like prioritizing what nonprofits I think are actually where like it's most direct, like the money is actually getting to the cause, and helping people. Like it feels good, and that's part of it, but it also is just like the more community there is and the better off everybody else is, actually, like the healthier your entire community is. If everyone's healthy and happy and has access to what they need and is fed and is warm, like crime goes down, employment goes up, there's like there's an overall benefit. So I just try, and it's worldwide, so I try to I focus hyper locally in my immediate community, and then sort of locally / nationally, and then internationally. And just try to be mindful of where my money is going, but also that it is important that I try to do something with it.
Well, I appreciate you explaining all that, because you gave some great tips there that I wasn't even looking for, that I thought, man, these are awesome. Because sometimes it's so easy. I know I've had the experience too. It's so easy. There's a cause out there and you think, oh, is this legitimate? Is it real? And, we need to check them out before I start donating my money, because if it were up to me, I would just start donating money without even thinking lots of times, because it's like,
right.
Oh, they're struggling. I want to help them. I've got the money.
Exactly.
I want to help them. And then I have to stop myself and say, okay. And so,
yeah.
So I love the tips that you shared. Those were awesome. And I love that you said it just makes sense. How simple is that? It's not like you're trying to do it for any other reason than it just makes sense. You're helping other people. You're helping people. We're living in a community. We're not just an island. We
are not.
Yeah, exactly. So that's awesome. You answered that question more perfectly than I could ever imagine. So thank you, Caileigh. It was awesome.
Of course. Well, thank you for asking it. Yeah, it's just, the one thing I'll add is it's the little things. Like the charity Shelter Wildlife Trust that I mentioned, they hire people from the local community. So you cannot volunteerism there. You cannot pay as a person from America without the skills to help to go play with the baby elephants. You can, when you give money to them, you're helping the elephants, but also they are employing the local community, which is such an important thing for me to think about, because they have the skills and they also live there. And so this is an issue that affects them really directly if their ecosystem is impacted by a dwindling animal population around them.
That's really good to hear. That's really good to hear. And, sometimes our audience has lots of questions, sometimes they don't. But either way,
that's okay. If anyone has a charity that we should know about, also.
Oh, that's actually really good. Yeah, and
chime in.
That's really good. Yeah, and maybe if they don't have it right with them, they can always send it. We can. I'm happy to post about that in the group, and I will definitely link to all of the charities that you mentioned. I want to be sure to link to all of those when I post this our podcast here. And so to wrap things up, then, in your free time. I know that you've mentioned these things, and I know the equestrian and the tea and all that, but are there any other activities that you really enjoy in your when you do have some free time, some downtime?
I love reading, and I just on a day under my weighted blanket, reading a book, just away from the world. I do love reading, primarily fiction, usually rom-com style or a mystery, something that, not that I don't like other types of books, but if I'm reading, it's probably more escapism. So that's what I like to do. I do like skiing. I can't say I'm great at it. I'm not terrible at it. I have a fear of heights. So there's the whole thing to overcome with that.
Wow.
But I do think it's fun when I actually, get past the part about having to take the lift super high and looking down the mountain.
I don't ski. I read, but I don't ski. But I don't ski.
Ice skating too. I find that a very fun winter activity.
Oh wow, that's cool. Well, hopefully one of these days, maybe Hallmark will decide to put you in a movie, or maybe you'll get to do a rom-com.
I'm ready.
I know you're ready. I could tell.
I've earmuffs and ice skates. I think Christmas comes every year, sometimes twice in July.
That's right. That's right. I see it. I see it. And so hopefully one of these days, Hallmark or GAC or somebody will reach out and say, yeah, Caileigh, come join us. And
I know I have a small town life fantasy. I have a farm life fantasy that I I'm happy to fulfill on screen until I can buy my own farm and live on it. So,
all right,
ready.
Well, that sounds like a really great way to end things, Caileigh, as we talk, as we're wrapping up here. Thank you again so much. It was great talking with you. If any of you in the audience want to just unmute and thank Caileigh, you can do that.
Thank you for answering your questions.
Of course. Thank you, Charlene.
Thank you, Paula. Is there anything on the horizon that we could see you in?
Oh, that's next? Good question.
Where will we see you next?
Well, it's so funny because there's something, but I have no idea if or when it'll ever see the light of day. And that would probably be possibly the next thing. Other than that, Jackie and I are working on some stuff. So, So Jax and I have some things in the works, so it might be more that. And then if the other thing ever comes out and I can talk about it more, I will. And if it never sees the light of day at a certain point, I can still talk about it.
Okay, that sounds good. Charlene, I'm so glad you asked that, because I had been remiss in asking that. So that's why I rely on my audience too, because sometimes I forget to ask things, and they'll jump in and say, "What about this?" So thank you so much. All right, thank you again, Caileigh. It was awesome getting to meet you here, and thank you to my wonderful virtual audience. You all are amazing, and thank you again.
Hi, everyone.
All right, bye. Well, I don't think there's a whole lot that I need to say, because Caileigh's so fabulous, and she covered so much and shared so much of herself. But what I want to do is I want to tell you about something that's going on with Caileigh right now. Her friends have organized a special GoFundMe account in honor of her, because right now Caileigh is experiencing a diagnosis with breast cancer. And her friends got together, and I'm going to share that link, that if you're interested in donating to it, you're not required to, of course, but it was something that I thought, wow, I'm so glad I read about this before I released this episode. In addition to that, I'm going to link as many of Caileigh's charities that she mentioned that I can. I'm going to do as much as I can, go and make sure I get them all. And if for some reason I forget one, I'm going to say, please tell me which one I forgot, and I'll add it. But I want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Caileigh, to listen to this conversation. I hope it was inspiring to you and encouraging to you. And she's right. It just makes sense to help other people. And that is something that resonates on so many deep levels with me, so many. So thank you for listening, for watching. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, review, share. If you happen to be watching on YouTube, please smash the like button, subscribe. I would so appreciate it. You guys are helping me so much to make this podcast something more than I could have ever imagined. So thank you so much for stopping by. Please give me your feedback. Join the Facebook group so that you can be a part of future episodes. Lots of stuff coming up. For everybody who is listening, for everybody who's watching, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. God bless you, and have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.